Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well and welcome to Spill the Beans. My name is Duncan Goldie. My guest this week is Dr. Keith Tsui. So Keith is a medical doctor. He trained at the University of Hong Kong, and he's got a full bachelor's of medicine, and he's eventually kind of gone on a bit of a career path as a medtech entrepreneur. Came through Harvard Business School online and then went to the University of Cambridge to do a master's degree. And during his time there, he has developed a company called Medwise.ai, which is super interesting business. Rather than being across the one kind of individual subsection within the massive world of healthcare, Keith's business has a knowledge sharing platform for clinicians. At the moment, it's specifically for COVID. So, if a clinician wants to find out more about how to treat COVID, they can go and use Medwise, or the aim is to be able to go and use Medwise to be able to, find out a bit more information. So it's a super relevant and interesting platform that they've built, and the growth that these guys are going through, as well as the recognition they've achieved over such a short period of time, and recognition in the form of awards as well. It's not just recognition from me in this podcast. So I really enjoyed chatting to Keith, and I hope you guys do too. Keith, hi, thank you so much for taking the time to do this and be on the podcast. How's everything going? Whereabouts in the world are you right now?
I'm currently based in London. Absolute pleasure to be on this podcast, and would love to chat with you about digital health stuff in general and what we're doing at Medwise.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Tell us, why have you chosen your background today? Which building is that you're sitting in front of?
Yes, indeed. So that's the Judge Business School at Cambridge. So I did a master's in MPhil in Bioscience Enterprise there. So we used to have lecture at Judge as well. And although I'm currently based in London, but prior to COVID-19, we're on the Accelerate Cambridge program based in Judge. So I go there every week to have like mentoring sessions, lectures, etc. So I miss going up.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, of all the places that people miss going to, I think, going to Cambridge is definitely going to be top of a few people's list, I'm sure. It's very lucky that you're able to do that as well. So, I mean, you kind of touched on a few things there in terms of, attending Cambridge for your masters and stuff like that. You've obviously got quite an interesting background, having come through sort of medical into digital health. Can you just give us sort of a bit of an overview over, your career and I suppose your educational history?
Yeah, sure. So I started out as a medical doctor. I'm actually from Hong Kong, so I did medical school there. I practiced there. So I completed the foundation year, the equivalent in Hong Kong. But I was always interested in healthcare innovation and entrepreneurship because when I was in medical school and also when I was practicing, I realized there is limitations to medicine. That there will be patients that you can't save just because they are diagnosed at a late stage cancer, and there's not enough screening tests or drugs to treat these patients. So it hit me really hard that, like, as doctors, what we can do is provide the best practice, but we're not really the people coming up with new solutions. So I'm very interested in that space. And I would say there's a life-changing moment when I got a student scholarship to go to a conference in San Diego. It's called the Exponential Medicine Conference, and it's super cool. Would highly recommend going there if you're interested in healthcare innovation. But essentially, I was seeing the doctors behind the Da Vinci robot, surgical robots, the doctors behind some latest gene or cell therapy, on stage talking about their research and achievements and translating these ideas into real-world products. It really captured my imagination, and that's why I decided to further my studies in this area and did the MPhil in Bioscience Enterprise at Cambridge. Super cool course as well. Learned a lot exactly how to translate ideas into products, and then that's kind of the start of my career into healthcare innovation.
And was Medwise I suppose, you've gone out there and sort of seen a bit of a gap. I mean, you obviously founded Medwise, so tell us kind of what is it, where does it sort of slot into the digital health and innovation industry?
Sure, absolutely. I think for me, throughout my journey in healthcare, obviously there are a lot of problems, and I had a lot of crazy ideas. So, and one of them back in Cambridge that I was trying to do is actually automating cell manufacturing, and then using that to automate universal blood cells. So that is kind of a crazy idea. Did some business plans and realized it's probably not feasible financially yet. So I think throughout my journey, I filtered a lot of the different ideas and decided to pursue Medwise really because of the technological innovations and within the AI space, and particularly in the natural language processing field. So what we are doing is to answer questions for clinicians faster than ever before by using AI and natural language processing technology to go through biomedical journal articles and guidelines and pick the right answers to questions asked by clinicians.
And how long has it been going for so far?
So we are a super young company. We're less than a year old, so super early stage, but it's very exciting. And I think I also decided to start Medwise because I've reached the point professionally that I feel I'm confident enough to start a company. I guess my plan has always been wanting to found a company that is important and can advance healthcare. But previously, I just didn't have enough experience. But I would say after a career, so after Cambridge, I had a career in management consulting and also product management in a digital health company. So learned a lot throughout those experience. So decided to start Medwise.
Yeah, perfect. Well, it's a pretty big sort of challenge, I suppose, that you've got. I mean, is the aim of Medwise to, be the go-to place for all clinicians that are sort of, doing their research or wanting answers? I mean, what does the future look like? How is it going to be applied, I suppose, now and in the future?
Absolutely. So I think before I answer that question, I have to understand what is happening now, which actually is quite interesting because when I was practicing as a medical doctor, I always find it difficult to get access to these informational knowledge or evidence that I need to guide decision making. And there's a research published in JAMA as a systematic review that actually shows that 50% of the time when clinicians have questions around patient care, they just don't pursue these questions. And to me, that I felt like that's quite shocking. I thought that's only me, but it's actually quite systemic. And the problem is actually because of time pressure. At the front line, clinicians are so busy, and we don't have the right tools to find the answers really quickly. And information and guidelines and documents are all over the place on different websites, sometimes in hospital intranets that are very difficult to navigate. If you don't know it's there, you can't find it. So yes, the ideal situation for Medwise would be to become that platform for these content to reside in, and use our AI-powered search to very quickly find the information and the answer for clinicians.
And so is it an online platform at the moment? I mean, how do clinicians currently access I suppose the information that Medwise is able to provide?
Yeah, so currently we are only having a beta version that is launched, and we're testing with clinicians. Essentially, it's a website, so as long as you have a device, be it mobile or desktop, as long as you can access to the internet, you can then ask those questions. We have already heard from some clinician feedback that within the NHS, some hospital doesn't have good reception, so potentially and quite likely further down the line, we will develop a mobile offline app version for clinicians as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can see that the appetite for it out there must be enormous. I mean, it's basically every NHS trust would love to be able to adopt some kind of AI or NLP program to be able to sort of assist all of their clinicians. But have you found, particularly around the the sort of COVID pandemic that there's been more of an uptake of people sort of wanting that access to information, because obviously this is unprecedented. So clinicians being faced with things that they might not have the answers to. Has that been something that you've been able to gain some more traction with, or is that another obstacle? Or?
Absolutely. I think it's both. It's both a challenge and an opportunity for us. Because on one hand, there's definitely a huge information need from the clinician side. However, on the other hand, it's because the situation is kind of accelerating, and there's so much information coming out. It makes it a challenge to try to organize that information. And so we see a lot of interest, but at the same time, for us as a very early stage company, we are trying to keep up with all these information as well. But luckily and very gratefully, we received an Innovate UK grant to further develop our platform. So we're working with development partners to try to advance from our beta version to a more kind of like full-scale product.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me a little bit more about that Innovate UK grant. I mean, I believe that's quite competitive to be able to obtain. Is that right?
Yeah, so it was a very rushed process, because I think the grant was announced, and within 2 weeks you have to put in the application. So it was a super hectic 2 weeks to try to pull together all our partners, the exact project plan, etc., and to put in a convincing application. And we're very fortunate to be to receive that grant out from 8,600 applicants. So yeah, it was challenging and competitive.
Yeah, definitely. But it also demonstrates to you at quite an early stage the value that your business is going to have as well. You know, if you're able to be one of the few, I suppose, winners essentially of out of 8,600 applicants, then that must be a big boost for you that you're going down the right path at least.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a boost for us to rapidly iterate the technology and test the solution with clinicians. And I think this is only the start, right? Because being able to surface the information quickly and answer questions, of course, will improve work efficiency. But in the end, I think the bigger problem that we're trying to address is actually unwarranted variation in care, and giving the best care to patients that science has to offer. And I think potentially with the waiting list in the NHS growing longer and longer because of COVID-19 disruption, there will be increased need for us to really give the best practice to patients, and actually not overdiagnose, overtest, or overtreat patients when there's already this huge backlog of patients waiting to be seen. So potentially the next stage for us is to see how we can really use our platform to help address those unwarranted variation in care.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me a little bit more about the people that you've got on board. I mean, it's obviously your brainchild, and something, as a digital health entrepreneur that you've been leading by the forefront. So how have you got these, well, what people have you got on board with you, I suppose?
Yeah, so actually this is a really cool story to tell, is how initially, so what I want to say is, like, I have a co-founder. He has worked in Google and Amazon Alexa before. I can't do coding, so he does all the AI and coding.
That's a pretty
magic.
Good person to have in your corner then, by the sounds of things.
Absolutely. It's a huge help. But I'm kind of like thinking back to originally when I had the idea. I actually did a lot of kind of like desk research, understanding the technology itself, and I spoke to maybe 15 to 20 PhD or masters in AI or natural language processing to really understand where the technology is at, and to get at least some validation that the technology is there to solve the problem that I want to solve. And I think I met Dan on through a common connection through the Y Combinator Startup School online course, which is super cool. They get entrepreneurs within the same area to come together and have a kind of like group meeting every week, and to talk about your challenge, pitch to each other, and help each other out. So on the first week, I would say, I'm looking for a technical co-founder who knows his stuff in natural language processing, and got introduced to Dan, who not just have a PhD and expertise in natural language processing, but he has a special interest in biomedical natural language processing. So we are a great match. And throughout the journey, we've worked with a lot of people actually just volunteering their time, really kind of like providing their input and advice, and being mentors. So very grateful to all the people along the journey. And I'm sure we'll meet a lot of great people in the years to come as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so, obviously you've seemed to have achieved quite a lot within a relatively short period of time. How long do you foresee until it's going to be ready to go live outside of a beta version?
Yeah, so for us, the Innovate UK grant project is for around 5 months. So we hope that by the end of 5 months, we will have something that can go live and test with and for more wide scale adoption. But it will still be a kind of like early product. I would say that we still have to continuously iterate and be agile around really understanding the need, collecting the data, and then improving the product. We definitely see Medwise. What we currently have is just very, very early stage. We have huge vision for the products that spans across the next 7 to 8 years, when it can then fully be embedded within hospital systems, EHRs, and also across different disease areas. Because right now, the platform is focused on COVID-19, but we believe the technology and the platform can be applied to a lot of different other disease areas in different use cases as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like you've got your work cut out, but there's obviously going to be a huge appetite there for people to adopt it once it's up and running. So I guess, from a more general perspective, then you're obviously a newcomer to the digital health space, and as a sort of business and leader and entrepreneur. How are you seeing more kind of innovation now within the sort of COVID era than there was beforehand? It might be hard for you to tell because obviously you're quite new to the industry yourself, but as a wider sort of scale across the whole industry, is there certain trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think what COVID-19 really changed is not the number of new innovations. I think the ideas and the innovation has kind of always been there, but it's the adoption and uptake of these innovations that has seen a huge boost. So in particularly where there is a huge unmet need with COVID-19, for example, by reducing and maintaining social distancing, a lot of virtual consultation and remote patient monitoring solutions and telemedicine solutions has seen huge uptick. And I think that it's definitely a great thing to see. And I think that potentially there are other digital health solutions. So for example, AI-based diagnostics tests or screening tests, those potentially will play a huge part in kind of like helping reduce the backlog in the wait list that the NHS currently has. So I think potentially for the solutions that are mature enough with the regulatory approval and with the evidence that it works, we'll see again quite a big uptick of those technology. And I think hopefully it will then slowly spread to all the other different digital health technologies as well, the digital therapeutics, clinical decision support tools like ours, and other digital health technologies.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems to be just like a fascinating transition at the moment, but a really necessary one, because it's not just about the access to healthcare for patients. It's also about the ability to provide that healthcare from the clinicians and everything like that, and how the technology can impact both sides. And a lot of the time, for example, with Medwise, the information is kind of already there. It's just how you have access to that information. So I think it's a really, really interesting space that you're in. But look, we're almost out of time. So thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with me. If anyone's sort of interested in finding out a little bit more and, you know, keeping track on how Medwise is growing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I think the easiest way would be to follow us on LinkedIn. So it's Medwise.ai. We also have a Twitter page, but we're trying to get more content through there as well. So you can follow us on Twitter. So also we have a blog area in our website. So if you follow the blog as well, that'll be cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll do that, and we'll put a link for that in the bottom of this podcast as well. So anyone who's listening along can always just click on that straight away. But look, Keith, for now, thank you so much for taking the time. It's really interesting work that you're doing, and excited to see what the future has in store for you. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Duncan.
Okay, that's it for us this week then, guys. Thanks very much to Keith for taking the time to talk us through Medwise.ai. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more information, I've put the links that you need in the summary of the podcast, so you can reach out to them there. Otherwise, keep well, stay safe, keep happy, and see you soon.